Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how the UK government is desperately trying to convince us all that they are leading the world against Putin's aggression, but how in reality they are actually doing even less than any other major Western power in the world, and it's not even a close last place. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I'm going to cover a couple of examples that add up to a Boris Johnson-led government that is clearly gaslighting us once again. But I must begin with our new Brexit minister, Jacob Rees-Mogg, a man who, like many of his cabinet colleagues, has never knowingly said anything intelligent in his political career. This is a tale of two charts, really. It's possible that you've seen this chart doing the rounds last week. It shows how many entities, as it describes them, have been sanctioned by various powerful governments. Now, an entity can be one of the wealthy oligarchs close to Putin. It could be a Russian bank. It could be a Russian business. Sanctioning them is not of equal value. They're not all the same. And the sanctions applied may not all be the same. So even if two countries have sanctioned the same entity, the sanctions may be deeper for one than the other. So if the numbers were fairly close, you wouldn't be able to really tell anything about the impact of the sanctions from this chart. It just shows the raw numbers. But just look at the disparity. The UK, as of the middle of last week when this chart emerged, had sanctioned 16 entities. 16. That will include, by the way, the 3 Russian oligarchs that aren't actually based in Britain, so will have no meaning anyway. The US, by comparison, had sanctioned 118. And then you go all the way up to the EU sanctioning 490. And this is what I'll mean by impacts as well, because you could compare, say, the US and the EU. Why are the EU doing more than the US? Well, the EU have sanctioned way more entities than the US, but the sanctions applied by America will weigh heavily. Like when the United States sanctions a country, the impact is devastating for a couple of reasons. First, the world trades with the USA, it trades with the dollar. It is the economic engine of the world right now, may not be forever, but right now. If you want to deal with American institutions, you do not ignore American sanctions. So the impact is very widespread. But that also applies to the EU to a lesser extent. But the second reason is that the United States don't give a crap whether you want dealings in America or not. If they sanction a bank or a business or anything else related to a government that they're not happy with, they will punish anyone who has dealings with them, even if they're not doing it with a US institution involved in the chain at all. They don't care. But there can be no justification for the UK being so far behind the rest of the Western world with the number of sanctions. Nobody believes that this can be explained by the EU has just sanctioned 490 Russian street vendors and the UK has sanctioned the 16 biggest banks and corporations in Russia. No, we've just been talking a good fight but not actually throwing any punches. Even Switzerland has sanctioned 371. Switzerland! The famously neutral in times of war Switzerland. But what's this got to do with Rees-Mogg? Well, he tweeted a different chart. And for context, it's important to know what the UK government is actually doing in comparison with other powerful economies in the West. So he tweeted this one. He thinks it shows the UK in a good light, but it actually highlights just how corrupt we are. He said, the City of London leads the way in the effects of sanctioning Russian banks. As if banks are sanctioning Putin's network. Banks don't impose sanctions on major business partners like other banks. They exist to make money. They hate sanctions. Hits their profits. No, banks don't impose sanctions. Governments do. Banks just have to obey them. But what Rees-Mogg said wasn't untrue. Strictly speaking, it's correct. It's just that his words don't mean what he thinks they do. That's how thick he is. If you sanction Russian banks and corporations, where would you expect the financial impacts to be greatest outside of Russia? Where they have their assets located. What this chart is showing is that Putin's economic machinery had invested more of its assets in the UK than even the mighty USA. And way more than the much larger and more important market of the EU. What this chart shows you is where most of the Putin-linked money in the Western world is. Obviously, it's not including Canada there, but I don't think anyone really believes that that's where the motherlode is located. What Jacob Rees-Mogg has done here is to expose just how much money those deemed to be supporting Putin have dumped into the UK. as part of the three largest financial markets in the West. This is why I said the Conservatives told Moggy to keep his mouth shut during the 2019 general election campaign. The man is to intelligence what a big hole in the side of your house is to home insulation. But although this was the most embarrassing, it's not the only example of the government trying to pretend that it's leading the world when it's actually having a kip on the side of the road. You know, Priti Patel was in Poland at the end of last week to say that there were no barriers to Ukrainian refugees coming to the UK. The reality is that rather than barriers, she meant to say provision. The Home Office were upset last week when people said they were doing nothing for refugees from Ukraine. Not true, they said, and then posted a link to their own website that confirmed that it was absolutely true, that they were doing nothing. The link took you to where you could apply for a work visa. So we are apparently delighted to accept Ukrainians fleeing war if only they would apply for a job in the normal way, wait the several weeks, you know, all the rest of it, and make sure they can meet our points requirements, of course. One helpful minister suggested that if they could hold on till the summer, they might be able to bypass the points system by getting a job picking fruit during the harvest. You know, as of the time of recording this, I've checked the updates on the Home Office website, make sure I'm bang up to date. And again, the only provision we've put in place is to allow family members of UK residents to come here. That's it. Even the process for claiming asylum, which works for refugees no matter where they come from, you would say, well, we don't need any special provision, just use the normal asylum route. That's impossible to use. It requires, if you try and claim asylum from overseas, it requires that you stay where you are while your case is considered. That'll take some weeks. But here's the thing. If you can actually stay in your war-torn home for this amount of time, then the process will conclude that your situation is not desperate and automatically turn down your application. Well, if you can afford to stay where you are for 3 weeks, you're not in that much danger, are you? In reality, the only way of being able to claim asylum in the UK right now is to make it here yourself, smuggle yourself into the country. But bear in mind that the government will do everything they can to stop you, including, but not limited to, threatening to push you out into the open sea. We're now getting confirmed reports of Ukrainians being denied asylum by the UK Home Office. What's that? You say there's a war in Ukraine? Is there? Do you have any corroborating evidence of that? No, I'm sorry, we're going to have to turn down your asylum claim on the basis that we're not convinced that war, as a result of a madman who is widely reported to be bombing civilian areas, is posing a serious threat to your life. So we're not imposing sanctions on Putin with any great zeal, especially not when we compare it to other countries, and we're not doing as much as we can on humanitarian grounds either. Just as with Brexit and COVID, Boris Johnson and his cabinet are conducting themselves in a way that involves bombarding the population with a lot of confusing noise while they help themselves to the nation's assets in the biggest heist in Britain's history. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you do, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.